Yesterday we saw a Mishnah. Yesterday we saw a Mishnah that there's no difference between Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni, with the exception of Kriyas Megillah Matanas Lavyonim. We said that the Megillah, if you laid it in Adar Rishon, it does not count. If Matanas Lavyonim, you give it in, and then it said the words Ein Bain. There is no difference. But those two words Ein Bain lead to a tremendous digression. Now, usually the Gemara digresses all the time, but to go off, as I say, in the tangential sunset, to go off in the tangential sunset by a Mishnah is very, very seldom. But yet now we're going to go off in the mamish, just digression after digression, different concepts of Ein Bain, Ein Bain, Ein Bain, Ein Bain, and that's the theme. So let's begin with the Mishnah on Zayin Amid Beis, the first wide line. Ein Bain Yontif l'Shabbos ela Eichel Nefesh Bilvad. Now the pasuk says, "Ubayom Rishon Mikra Kodesh, Ubayom Shvi Mikra Kodesh." That's the difference between Shabbos and Yontif. Shabbos, there's 39 of his malachas. You cannot perform any one of them without getting chorus with Eidim and Hasra, you get skila. Eidim, and without Hasra, you get chorus. And Bishogeg, you're being a chatas. As opposed to Yontif, it's a laugh. If you're machal Yontif, it's malchus. Now it's interesting. The Mishnah says the only difference between Yontif and Shabbos is ochel nefesh, meaning you're permitted to go ahead and do malacha that facilitates eating on Yontif, which you can't do on Shabbos. It could have just as easily said the difference is what Shabbos is skila and Yontif is a lav, but we're not speaking about punishments. So since we're not speaking about punishments, that's not included in the Mishnah. That's what Rashi says to answer that question. So we're answering that the difference is that a malacha that would lead to eichel nefesh, the whole Masechta Beitza was predicated upon this cooking and whatnot. So that's the difference between Shabbos, Ein Bein, Shabbos, and Yontif. Regarding the halacha of machshiri eichel nefesh, they would be equal. Now, the word machshiri means preparation. Let's say you have a knife and you're allowed to shecht on Yontif. Can you go ahead and sharpen a knife to shecht on Yontif? That would be machshiri eichel nefesh. Let's say on Yontif itself, a knife gets bent. You want to correct it. It's mashma that both, whether it's Shabbos or Yontif, machshiri are not permitted. Only the eichel nefesh itself, but not something that would help you to get to that step of actually cooking. Both Shabbos and Yontif are equal, that not permitted. Masnisan, that does not permit machshir eichel nefesh, like Rabbi Yehuda. It's not like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, we learned the Rabbi Yehuda in Ein Bein Yontif l'Shabbos ela eichel nefesh. However, Rabbi Yehuda matir af machshir eichel nefesh. Rabbi Yehuda matis even machshir eichel nefesh. He would permit you to go ahead and do something that even if it's not eichel nefesh itself, not the cooking process itself, you'll be able, according to Rabbi Yehuda, to make a pot. You'll be able to go ahead and make a pot in order to cook. You'll be able to go ahead and make a knife in order to cook. Similar to Rabbi Eliezer, the Mila, right? You can make a knife to go ahead and perform a Mila, right? Similar thing. So now, my timer, what's the reason? What's the machloikas between the Tanakama that machshiri eichel nefesh are not permitted, and Rabbi Yehuda that machshiri eichel nefesh are permitted? Hamakra, the pasuk says again, just the last part of the pasuk, achasher yochel lechol nefesh hu levado yosel lechem. Who? The actual eichel, the actual act of cooking, v'loy machshirav, and not what? The act of preparing. It's a limit. It's a gezeres hakosav. We're learning from the pasuk. We're extrapolating from the pasuk this din that what? That you cannot go ahead and make machshir. Who? After the act of cooking, but not machshirav to go ahead and facilitate the act of cooking. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yehuda says, says lachem. The pasuk says, for you. When it says for you, it's a very inclusive term. What does lachem mean? Lachem, any of your needs, anything that has to do with eichel nefesh. Lachem, even if it's a preparatory step, that would be what? That would be accepted. So that's machloikis, says the Chachamim. Who? Says Rabbi Yehuda lachem. Obviously now, what does each one do with the other one? That is usually par for the course in learning. The idach, the other, what does the other one do with the other one? The idach nami yaksiv lachem. what does the Tanakama who limits it to the act of achila, does not lot machshirin, what does he do with the limit of Rabbi Yehuda? He says, lachem lachem lachem. You can't cook for a guy. You can cook for you, lachem for you, but for a guy you couldn't. Lachem, you can cook for yourself, but for Fido, you can't cook for Fido. The dog you're not cooking for the dog. Good. Idach nami haksivhu. What does Rabbi Yehuda do with the limit of the Chachamim? Who mashma just what? Oichel nefesh itself, but not machshiram. What does he do with the who? It says ksiv hu, ksiv lachem. It says both. Kam b'machshirin she'ef shalas soisam yerev yontif. Kam b'machshirin she'ef shalas soisam yerev yontif. Machshirin that you possibly could do from erev yontif would not be permitted. So the scenario I gave you was not true. You would not be able to make a pot on Shabbat, on Yontif to cook. Why? Because you could have made the pot before Yontif. In other words, when it says who, it's limiting. I, Rabbi Yehuda, say you could go ahead machshir echel nefesh, but not all encompassing. Not everything could you possibly go ahead and do. For example, a pot. Can you make a pot? No. Why? Because you could have made it Erev Shabbos. Your knife gets bent, your knife gets a nick in it. Can you take the nick out to go ahead and shecht on Yontif? Yes, you could, because that happened on Yontif. So that would be the difference between lochem, l'chol tzarchechem, that's what, a machshir in ochel nefesh, that you could possibly have anticipated. Who, it only ochel nefesh, meaning a not machshirin that you could have anticipated. That's the first Mishnah of Ein Bein, the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham. Okay, the second Ein Bein is between Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Very, very, very famous Ein Bein. The difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippur. So we're familiar that Shabbos, if you do any one, as I just said before, any one of the 39 malachis, you chayiv with Eidim and Asra, you get skila. Without Eidim Asra, without Asra, you would get karis, and with what? And with just b'shogeg, you would get what? You would get have to be the cardinal. What about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, the Isser is Karis. Yom Kippur, the Isser is not Bidei Adam, it's Bidei Shemayim. Skila is given Bidei Adam. But what? But Yom Kippur, if a person goes ahead and does the Malach on Yom Kippur, what you would get Karis. Ein Bein Shabbos Yom Kippurim, El Shezeh Zedainei Bidei Adam. By Shabbos, the Zadain, the act of doing something, B'mezid, that is punishable Bidei Adam. And this, by Yom Kippur, the Zodan is Bikaris. That you would get Karis. That's the difference between the two. Okay. Hala'inyan Tashlumim, Zev is Shavin. But regarding Tashlumim, they would both be equal. So guys, let's go. It's Yom Kippur, and you burn down a haystack. Right? It's Yom Kippur, you burn down a haystack. Okay? So what happens? Two things happen. One, you're mechayiv karis for burning on havara on Yom Kippur. You're also chayiv to pay for burning down the haystack. If you do it on Shabbos, so you'd be chayiv skila for the act of chilul Shabbos, and you'd be chayiv to pay what? For burning down the haystack. Well, we all know that as the natives are getting restless. Okay. So now we have a memory of something from yeshiva. For some reason, anyone who's been through the yeshiva system knows there's something called kamle b'drabamine. That if you have in football, if you have two penalties, if you have an offside and a personal foul, you take the personal foul because that's more severe, right? So here you have two penalties. You have the chiyuv of skila or the chiyuv of karis, and in both cases you have accompanied by a tashlumin, a payment. So the is skila and the is or the is of karis goes ahead and overrides the isawad of tashlumin. Whether the pot is it, whether it's still there but you don't have to pay it, that's already lumdus with a chakira. Okay, but right now beyond the scope of the share. So they're both equal. In other words, you would say kamle b'derabbi. Now, guys, what's the chiddush? Not everyone agrees by anissa karis. You say kamle b'derabbi. Everyone agrees by anissa misa b'dei shamayim. You would go ahead and say kamle b'derabbi. But not everyone agrees by karis. You say kamle b'derabbi. Misa b'dei adam. Misa b'dei adam. So now says the Gemara, regarding the patur of not paying, they would both agree. Money is masnisan. Who's the Tana of our Mishnah? It's Reb Nechunya ben Akana. It's the Tana Reb Nechunya ben Akana. The Tanya Reb Nechunya ben Akana. Es Yom Kippurim k'Shabbos l'tashlumin. He would treat Yom Kippur like Shabbos regarding paying. Ma Shabbos mischayev benafshay. Just like if a person does an act, it has to be at the same time, right? A person does an act that would carry with it a chiyuv of death or a chiyuv of a monetary chiyuv, that the chiyuv of death upater minat tashlumim. Af Yom Kippur, so Yom Kippur, which again you're not going to kill bidei adam. It's a karis mischayev benafshay upater minat tashlumim, and you be pater from the tashlumim. Okay, so the inyan tashlum, the din of come lay b'derab minei, you give to him the b'derab minei, the one that is more severe, they both will be equal. Tanan Hassam. Kol chayve krisis, any chiyuv of krisis, shelaku, that gets malchus, nifteru midei krisasan. They pata from karis. In other words, I have a chiyuv of karis, and now instead of karis, the person told me, you know what, if you do this, you're going to get malchus. Shenemar v'nikla achicha le'einecha, and your brother will be nikla, he'll be made less in front of you, he'll be brought down in front of you. Kivin shelaka, once he gets malchus, harihu achicha, he's like achicha, he's like your brother, meaning he did tshuva and he's back in the same ballpark. Okay? So the chiddush of the Mishnah is if you get, again, I'm chayiv, one is chayiv karis, and one receives malchus in lieu of the karis, that would pat them from the karis. Seems like a pretty good deal, right? He would go ahead, right? He would go ahead and get off the karis. Now, it's important to know, I think, if you look at Rashi, kol chayve krisis shalaku, go up a little bit in Rashi, shehispru edim alav she'imay karis, v'laka bezdin. Any chayv karis that you gave hasra with edim on the lav that's in it, with it, in other words, you gave them, you said you're going to get malchus. Niftru mikishisasan shuvein bezdin shel ma'ila nefroyim. Bezdin shel ma'ila will not take retribution from him. Okay, so that's what it seems to be saying. Who says this? Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. These are the words of Chananya ben Gamliel. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says the Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Chalukim lov chaver of Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. His friends disagree with Rabbi Chananya. Now what? They said that if you get malchus, it's not going to pat you from karis. You'd still have an issue of karis. So Amar Rava, Armi Bei Rav, said in the yeshiva of Rav, Tanina, Ein Ben Yom Kippur l'Shabbos, El Shezez Zedayna B'Dei Adam, V'Zez Zedayna B'Karis. That's our Mishnah, right? The only difference is one gets karis and one gets what? Skila. V'Im Isa. And if you're telling me, fellas, that you can get malchus, Idi V'Idi B'Dei Adam He. Guys, outside. You just told me a distinction. You said Shabbos, you're going to get punished by Bezdin. Yom Kippur, you're going to get punished by God. Karis. Good? That's the distinction. You're now telling me this punishment by God is possible to get what? Malchus. Malchus is Bidei Adam. So how can you possibly tell me that you're going to get Malchus and Pati from the Karis? That's not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says the only distinction between Shabbos and Yom Kippur is one is punishable by Bezdin and one is not. According to you, that Malchus can take care of the Karis, both are punishable by Bezdin. Both are punishable by Bezdin. That would apparently be against what? Our Mishnah. One more time. Amar Rava. Amar Bei Rav Tanina. Ein ben Yom Kippur l'Shabbos, el shezez zedayna b'yedei Adam, v'zez zedayna b'Karis. The imisa, if you're going to tell me that what? That if you receive Malchus, it's going to pat you from Karis. Both Sai Shabbos and Sai Yom Kippur has the aspect of being punishable by man. So l'chayrev, it was the like our Mishnah. Rav Nachman Hamani, who's the Tana of our Mishnah, is Rabbi Yitzchaki Damar Malchus b'chavi krisis leket. In other words, it doesn't exist. If you go to a person's chayiv karis and say you're going to get Malchus, it doesn't exist. It's not in the ballpark. It doesn't exist. This is machlokes in the third parak, guys. Third parak Masechta Malchus. Usually by that time, your kid is petered out because you did Adam Zomim and you did a little gullus up and down. But the third parak is packed, and that's Malchus. And the first, you have machlokes. You know Malchus yet? Anyway, so there's a machlokes. Rabbi Yitzchak says you don't get Malchus. So our Mishnah, very good. Our Mishnah says the only difference between the two is what? is punishable, be the other one is not. That's Rabbi Yitzchak, because hey nachinami. You have an issa of chorus, it's not punishable in Malchus because it doesn't exist. The Tanya, where do you see this? Rabbi Yitzchak going mechayve krisis b'chal hayu. V'lomi yatsa chorus b'achaysai, l'doinim b'chorus levi Malchus. In the end of Parshas B'chukoisai, it says, Parsha Baroyas, it says, Kikola Nasa says, Kikola Teva says, anyone who does all these things will get chorus. That's what it says. It's a general term for chorus. Included in the Aroyas is one sister. In the next Parsha, in Parshas Kedoshim, it says if a person's with his sister, you get chorus. Why is it necessary to repeat it? Because Achaisai was bechlal in the rule in Parshas B'chukoisai of anyone who does any of these toyevis. So why are you going in now and saying you're going not repeating, you're saying something that's extraneous. So why is it coming out? So to stress, why it's coming out to tell me you get chorus? To say you only get chorus and you don't get malchus. The line because leila malchus. So again, this is the answer to the kasha. Amish is Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says you don't get malchus. The reason Rabbi Yitzchak says you don't get malchus is because Achaisa is taken out of the parsha of Vad of Chorus to teach me you don't get malchus. And Memela, Amish has a distinction between Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Shabbos is b'dei Adam and what? And Yom Kippur is never b'dei Adam because you don't get malchus. That's one teretz to the kasha. Avashi Mafil Tem Rabbanon. The Mishnah could be according to Rabbanon. In fact, that what? And you would get malchus. If you would get malchus, so it's the punishable b'dei Adam. I said this is the obvious teretz. That's not the lechatchila to get in. Guys, even if you're going to tell me that you get malchus, it's going to pata you from chorus. What's the main din? The main din is chorus. Yom Kippur is chorus, right? If you go ahead and get malchus, it's going to pata you. That's not the main din. I would say it's not even a loophole. It's just a perk that in sense. Guess what? If a person gets malchus, we have a gezeres hakosas that says v'nikla chicha beinecha. Since your brother's eyes, we have a gezeres hakosas. You get off the hook. But that's not the first step. The first step is chorus, and our Mishnah is discussing the first step. So our Mishnah, according to Ravashi, is not limited to Rabbi Yitzchak, who says there's no malchus. Even according to Rabbanan, who says there is malchus, the Mishnah still would be tried and true because why? One is a chiyuv of chorus, and one is a chiyuv of bidei adam. That's our second ein bain. That's our second ein bain. The first ein bain, what's the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tif? The second ein bain, what's the difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippur? The third ein bain. Right? It's very, very funny. Mordechai and Esther seem like a lifetime ago. Right? So Mordechai and Esther, what? Last they were dealing with Germans and hanging, and now it's just that's Gemara. Karas and Skila, right? Okay. Ein bain amudah. Okay, now. Fellas, there's the concept of mudahana. Mudahana means that you go ahead, you make a neder, you're not going to have enough from your friend. I'm not going to have any enough from you. That's it. I'm not having any enough from you. Now, ein bein mudahana mechaver. There's no difference a person who says a neder that he's not going to have enough from his friend. Lemud mimena meichel, to say that he won't have any culinary hana from his friends. He won't have any meichel deka. Now, ela drisas haregel, only the ability to walk through a person's field. If you mudah enough from your friend, you won't be able to use the path through his house. And in addition, Rashi brings that if a kli that you borrow that has nothing to do with oichel nefesh, right? Let's see Rashi inside. Let's see Rashi. A kli, let's say a power tool, an axe, something that doesn't have to do with oichel nefesh, you would be able to borrow from someone that you made a hana that you won't have enough from his cooking. Lemud Michael. The dafka b'makom shem askirin kiyotzaben. That's dafka in a place where they're not available for rental. Aval makom shem askirin kiyotzaben, in a place where you would be able to rent out the power saw. Tana behedya, we learn openly the asa. It would be asa even if you're mudar just for food. It'd be asa to go ahead and rent the power saw. The cholana shem loy hahanu zeh hayimachasav pruta hana Michael. Again, if you didn't have this hana, you'd have an extra money, and that money you'd be able to buy food. Right. So this is a very, very broad statement that the only difference between a person who makes a ned and not to have any hana or not to have hana in food would be the ability to walk through their field. If you mud hana, you can't walk through the field. Or If you mud the Michael, you could. And kalim that you can't make ochel nefesh. Now these kalim ochel nefesh comes with a joiner. It comes with what? That people don't rent out these kalim, right? So if a place that doesn't rent out power saws, then you'll be okay. If it rents out power saws, that money you save by renting out that you can buy food with, you would not be able to go ahead and from the person you would mudam Michael also to take his power saw. Says the Gemara, they will both agree that a pot you cannot go ahead and borrow, guys, right? A pot. In other words, even the one that says mudam and Michael, they both agree you would not be able to borrow a pot, even if they don't rent pots, guys. Even if they don't rent pots, right? Nonetheless, that would be considered oichel nefesh. Fred Gemara hole kapti inchi. People are not what? They're not makbid. People are not makbid. So why is it asa b'hana if they're not makbid? So Marava Hamani Rabbi Eliezer he dama vita asa b'mudhana. Rabbi Eliezer says that vita that a person's mevater is asa b'hana. Still remember learning this and the Rebbe explained vita the following way: people go to the fruit stand and what do? They see cherries, so they take a cherry and then they eat it. They want to see if it's good, right? Why? Why is it? Are you allowed to do that without asking? Pashtus, yes. Why? Because that they're mavata. They're mavata. They just mavata. They're not makbid. But if the guy's mavata, you can't. So Rabbi Eliezer says even vito would be what asa. So even though people are not makbid by pots, nonetheless, since what Rabbi Eliezer tells you mavata, and this is what? Did I say pot? Stop that. I don't know. I didn't learn Drisas Regel. Okay, I'm sorry. Drisas Regel, I was explaining incorrectly. Drisas Regel, so the person's not makbid with Drisas Regel. So I'm a Rav Hamani Rav Lezi that fit to be us. Okay, Drisas Regel. I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, next. Okay, we had this many times, guys, outside. I want to bring a carbon. In other words, there are carbonis that you have to bring, such as an asham, if you were mile behegdish, if you stole and swore, or your tamei as a nazir, or as a mitzvah has to bring, or a shivcha harufa. There's a halacha of a chatas we just mentioned. If a person does an aveira, b'shogeg, that b'mezid with carry a chi of karis, you bring it on. And then there's a carbon that you want to bring. That carbon is called a neder or a nedava. I can bring about that carbon in one of two ways. I can say hare olai, it's upon me to bring a carbon, or I could say hare zu, this is a carbon. What would the difference be? One, I'm making the chiyuv on myself. So let's say this is the animal. And I say it's on me. If anything happens to this animal, it's irrelevant. I still have to bring another animal, right? I have to bring another animal because the chiyuv is upon me. And I don't go ahead and alleviate my chiyuv until I actually bring it. Hare olai versus hare zu. I say this animal is the carbon. If something would happen to this animal, I'm not required to make it up because I never said upon myself. I said upon this object. Okay? So now that's called an adava. The dava is when you're making it the animal. Says the Mishnah, Ein bein nedarim l'nedavos, ela shenedarim chai b'achru yusan. A neder, if it gets lost or stolen or it dies, right? You be required to make it up because you said hare olai. When the davos, but if you gave it a dava, you said it's on the animal, ein chai b'achru yusan. You won't be chai b'achrayis. Mashma hale inyan bal ta'acher zev shavin. We saw in Masechta Rosh Hashanah that a person has 3 regalim to bring. We had a machlokes whether it's 1, 3. Not yeah. Well, the order. Well, you need the order. In other words, you have to be. It has to be the order of Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Right? There's a bal ta'achad. There's a din of le'yachal shalmoi, and you're not going ahead and delaying your neder. So it's mashma. When the chiyuv was on you, or the chiyuv was on the animal, you have the same 3 months to go ahead. What? Same 3 regalim. Then you bal ta'achad. Tan hasam ezel neder. What is exactly is a neder? Is a oimer hare olai oila. It's upon me an oila. Ezel nedava. Oimer hare ze oila. Hare zu oila. This is an oila. Again, in my case, it was a water bottle. Umad mein nedarim nedavos. What's the difference between nedarim and nedavos? Nedarim meisla nignavu by nedarim. If the animal dies or is stolen or yavdu is lost, Chai b'achiyusa, and you have to make it up. Again, this is elaborating upon the Mishnah, more wordy brisa. The dava is meso nignaboy of the chai bar. In the dava, if it's stolen or it dies, you're not chayiv. Minani mili. How do you know? The Tanur Rabbanan, the brisa says, it says by a carbon, v'nir tzaloi, and it'll be accepted for him, l'chaper alav. Shimon Omer, es shalav, chay b'ach yusay, that's upon him is chay b'ach rayis, v'she'enu alav, ein chay b'ach yusay, that's not upon him is not chay b'ach rayis. Right? My mashma, v'yitzot, by Avdim, given the Adam a lie, since he said it's upon me, commanded toyin akantve dami. I just want to throw this out to you guys. Why would you need a pasuk to go ahead? It makes sense in Svar, right? In other words, the Lashon, Harei Alai, it's upon me. Harei Zu, it's this. Like, what? I guess there must be a Havamina that Harei Zu, that since you're giving a carbon, you would have to bring it anyway, that you need a pasuk to tell me no. Or else it's very shver. Okay, weiter. Okay, so let's go. So the first aim being was between Shabbos and Yontif. The second aim being was between Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Third aim being was between Mudah No, Mudah and Michael, and the fourth aim being was between Nedarim and Nedavos. Okay, now yeah.
Usually, there's differences like there's a commonality at Shabbos and Yontif, certain malachas, etc. But Nedarim and Nedavos. What's the commonality?
Carbon. You're being a carbon. The carbon is the commonality. Very, very common, right? In both cases, I'm required to bring a carbon. The question is if I'm limited to this one or no, more. But the commonality is the carbon. Okay, the next piece of guys, listen outside. The next piece of Gemara, the next two pieces, Zav and Mitzayra they're just basic ideas and they're ones that we're not that familiar with. The Zav we are familiar with, and Mitzayra not so much. Let's go over Zav. A Zav is somebody who has a flow that comes from his body. It comes from his aver. It comes from the same place where Zera comes from. It's different than Zera. It's a different color. It's a different viscosity. It's a disease that we don't have Bisman Hazeh. A person would see it once. He'd be no difference than a person who sees Zera. Same thing. He'd go to the mikvah and goes to the evening and he's tahar and yasha. Everything's fine. If he sees twice, he has to stop his flow and he has to count 7 clean days and then go to a mikvah. If he sees 3 times, he has to go ahead, count 7 days, and in addition, at the end of 7 days, he has to bring a carbon. He will be known as mechusa kippurim. Until he brings his carbon, he can't eat kachim. He's mechusa his kapara. He's missing his kapara. So you have a zav that's a zav for 7 days, a 2 re'iyas, a zav that's 7 days, 3 re'iyas. What's the only difference? The carbon. The only difference is the carbon. Says the Mishnah. Ein bein zav haroya shtei re'iyos l'roya shalish el carbon. The only difference between a zav that's roya shtei re'iyos and roya shalish is a carbon. Now, in addition, just as the zav has some very severe transmissions of tumah. We're familiar with the hierarchy of tumah, starting with the mace being the avi avois tumah. Anyone who touches the mace is tamei tumas mace. Anything that is an avatuma has the capacity to be metama odom v'kelim. Anything that's an avatuma has the capacity to be metama odom v'kelim. Something that's a rishon can only be metama ochel mashka, food and drink. It cannot be metama ochel v'kelim. So usually it goes down a 1 degree based upon whatever it is, how it's transmitted. The zav has a tumah called midras. If a zav goes ahead and pushes on something that is supposed to be, if a zav sits on a chair, the zav is an avatuma, the chair is an avatuma. It does not go down. If the zav lies down on a bed, not only is the top part of the bed tamei tumas avatuma, even 10 mattresses would be. That's called tumas mishkav u'moishiv. Mishkav, I gave moishiv as the first scenario. Mishkav is what is the other scenario. In other words, there's a severity of tumah that does not exist in the other realms of tumah. The fact that if he lies down, let's say you have a bunch of mattresses piled one upon the other, and he's only touching the first mattress, we don't say that first mattress becomes a rishon and can't be metamid a second mattress. Every single mattress there is tamei and avatuma. So now, regarding mishkav u'maishev, the tumah that I just described of the zav, the siparish shiva, and the counting of 7, the need to count zayin akiyim, zev is a shavin. Whether you became a zav by seeing twice or you came a zav by seeing 3 times, you will be equal vis-a-vis those 2 unique halachas, the halacha of mishkav u'maishev and the halacha of zayin akiyim. The only chilik we have, guys, is what? Is the carbon. Guys, the only chilik we have is the carbon. Now, minani mili, how do you know this? How do you know that there's shav in the tumah and not the carbon? How do you know that? The Tana Rabbanan. Rav Simoy Oimer. Mona kosiv shtayim, the karu tamei. Okay, I think I put this on. I'm not sure. Let me see if I think I wanted to put this on. It would be in the notes. No. I think I have it in the notes. There it is. Guys, you can see this. I don't think I sent it, but guys, if you look at Perik Tesvav in Vayikra, Perik Tesvav in Vayikra, if you have a Chumashim, I could send it now. The truth is, I could send it out right now. Okay, let me send it right now. Where can this item be selected? It might be easy if you get a chumash. I'm having problems with this. Okay, so by Moshe ve'Aaron leimor, guys, listen to the pasuk. Dabru el bnei Yisrael tesvav vayikra tesvav. Dabru el bnei Yisrael ve'amat aleim ish ki zov mibsaroi zoivoi tamehu. Notice a double lashon. Ki zov 1 mibsaroi from his flesh. Zovo a second time tamehu. Bizoistia tumasai bizovo 1, roar bisarai azovo 2, as hechtim bisarai mizovo 3 tumasohi. So we have one pasuk that says the lashon of zov twice, zov zovo, and a second pasuk that says it 3 times, zovo, zovo, and mizovo. So we have a pasuk that says it what 3 times. What do we do with that? Let's see what the Gemara does with that. Says Rab Simoy, Omer, Mona hakosiv shtayim, v'karu tamei. The pasuk counts it twice, zov zavo, and calls him tamei. Shalosh 3 times, v'karu tamei. There must be a difference. 2 and 3, there must be a difference. Haketzad shtayim l'tuma. 2 makes me tamei, the shalosh, and the third one likarbin. The third one for a carbon. So we have a double, a triple. My nafkamina between the double and the triple is what? The double is tamei, 7 days. That's in that same. He needs zayin nikiyim, and the one who's tamei shalosh 3 times he has to bring a carbon. Fred the Gemara ve'ema shtayim lituma v'loy lekarbin. Shalish lekarbin v'loy letuma. Let me say shtayim would make what? Mitame and not a carbon. And 3, I would bring a carbon, but I won't be tamei. Armit at shaloi rosh shalish rosh time. Guys, you can't have $200 without having $100. It's no smarter to say that what? Before I saw 3 times, I saw 2 times. So you can't tell me 2 I'll be tamei, 3 I won't be tamei, I'll bring a carbon. Once you saw twice, you're tamei. So of course, nothing took off your tamei after 2 times. So I see the 3rd time. I'm tummy after 2 times. Now I see a 3rd time, you're not tummy anymore. What took off my tumah? So that can't be.
How do you know if the tumah or the shiva nakim come first? Why can't you say
Shiva nakim means lucky for my tumah. What does nakim mean? That's when you, no.
If you saw one,
the pasuk says when you stop seeing, right? You stop seeing, then you start counting. Okay, so now ve'ema shtayim lekarbin v'loy letuma. 2 would be a carbon and not tuma. Sholish afla tuma. Oh, so now, guys, watch. Guys, look at me. 2 only tame, 3 tame carbon. Why don't I say the following, right? 2 not tame carbon, 3 tame carbon. In other words, I need 3. Did you hear that, Penny? Yeah. Clearly, 3 is more severe than 2. You're saying the severity is they're both tame, and this one brings the carbon. Let me say the following. This one's not tame and brings the carbon. This one's tame and brings the carbon. And now 3 is more severe than 2. Fred the Gemara Kasha, Ve'ema shtayim lekarbon v'loy letuma, shalish af letuma. Says Loy Sakadai. You can't go ahead and possibly entertain that. You can't entertain that. Why the Tanya? The chipra of akoyim lefnei Hashem mizoyvoy from his zav. What does that mean? Now the chipra of akoyim means that guys. What does it mean? The kohen who's bringing the carbon will be mechapa for the zav. Good. Mizovo means only one of the zavim needs a kapara. You want to entertain that both need the kapara. It wouldn't say mizovo. Mizovo means part, mixas. Mem always means part of. So, the chipur of akoyin l'fnei Hashem, mizovo, mixas zavim mevian carbon, and mixas zavim a mevian carbon. Only one of them. So, haketzad, rosh sholish, maybe, shtayim ena mevi. Ayen ela roh beis mevi, rosh sholish ena mevi. Aminat shloi rosh sholish, rosh shtayim. Okay, so now, l'chayr we have a good limud. Vitzrich Rav Samoi, Vitzrich Mizovo. We need Rav Samois who said one pasuk says 2, one pasuk says 3, and you need Mizovo to tell me what that only one of them brings the carbon. Dimi the Rav Samoi have Amina Kikushin. I would have said the question, right? That the chilik is in tuma, not in carbon. That the chilik is in tuma, not in carbon. Kamash Malon Mizovo. That the chilik is in carbon. Vi Mizovo, I would think Lo Yadana Kama. I wouldn't know how much. Mizovo, which one? Kamash Malon, Rav Samoi, that the 3 and not the 2. Okay, so now guys, we have a lima. Let's go. Let's chazriba. We know a person who sees twice is tamei. A person who sees times is tamei is a carbon. We have Rav Simois. It says twice. It says 3. The one that says twice is tamei. The one that says 3 is a carbon. And how do we know that? It says mizovo in the pasha of carbon. The chipra of akame. The kohen by bringing the carbon will be cleansed. Who will be cleansed? One of them. Which one? Obviously the 3. So now you have a limit for that. Now, we darshan mizovo, so the Gemara now wants to extend. Once you're using mizovo a certain way, let's extend it in another pasuk and also use it a certain way. Says the Gemara the following. V'chiyiter hazav mizovo, v'sif the pasuk, v'safa le'shivas yomim, right? For l'tarasai. He counts 7 days. That's the pasuk, right? When the zav dove is clean from his zav, then you count 7 days. My derash today, why are you going to dash from that word mizovo? Only boy over the following Tanya. The chiyiter azav, that means the chiyus mizovo. In other words, even before he goes to the mikvah, right, you can start counting. Guys, as soon as it stops, you can start counting. You don't have to go to the mikvah to start counting Zayin Yomim. You can start counting as soon as what? As it stops. 1. Mizovo, velo mizovo vinego. Guys, let's say he has both. Let's say he's a double whammy. The guy's a real loser. He's a mitzayra and a zav. So you might think that you'd have to wait till he's finished with his saras to start counting the 7 days. No, he can start counting the 7 days as soon as his flow stops. He's not a zav anymore. Count 7 days, despite the fact that you're going to be still in mitzayra. Nonetheless, you can count your 7 days. The siper. Limed al zav bal shtei re'iyos shetoyin svir shiva, that a zav needs 7. V'haloi din who it's a kal v'chaymer in mitama mishkav v'moishav le'etoyin svir shiva. Fellas, we spoke about the severity of the tumah of a zav. It's mitama mishkav v'moishav. So I would say if it's mitama mishkav v'moishav, certainly what you should be able to count 7 days. Says the Gemara on the base sheimeres yom kineged yom tochiach. A sheimeres yom kineged yom tochiach. Some more difficult Gemara. Okay, guys, outside. A zava is not like a zav. A zava is seeing blood. Just as a nida sees blood, the zava sees blood. The only question is, on which day did she see blood? Did she see blood in a period of 7 days, specifically or in 11 days. After the 7-day period, she's Buddies and Nida. In the 11-day period, she's called a Zava. Let's say she has to be clean for 7 days, right? So let's say to be a Zava, so what? She's in the 11 days. She sees once, 2, 3 times. She's now a Zava. She has to count 7 days. Let's say she sees 1 day. So all she has to do is go ahead and watch 1 day connected that day. She sees 1 day. If she's tar for 1 day, then it's good. Then she can continue the 11 days. So what's going on? The Gemara wants to know that person, that Zava, she would be Tama Mishka V'Moshev. And nonetheless, she's not Tame for what? She doesn't have to count 7 days. So you want to make a Kal V'Chayim. You want to say Kal V'Chayim Madach Zav is Tame Mishka V'Moshev. Certainly, he must also be what? Count 7 days. That's not true. We see a Zava, Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom, who saw Dam 1 day and is watching, is Metama Mishka V'Moshev, and yet she doesn't go ahead and count 7 days. So that will disprove your point. The Afat Al Tama, you as well should not go ahead and wonder. Al Zeh Sha'afa B'Shem Metama Mishka V'Moshev Lo Yein Torn Sphere Shiva. Talmud Loimar, it says Mizovo V'Siper. Mixa Zovo V'Siper Liman Al Zov Bal Shtei Riyos Shetorn Sphere Shiva Yom, that needs 7 days. Now, guys, we had 2 Mizovos. We had one Zov that included and one Zov that was excluded. We had one Linyan 7 days that included, and then we had one from Korban that excluded. Guys, watch. The Chipur of a Koyen Mizovo, that was an exclusion. Only a 3-day got the kapara, a 2-day didn't. Over here, telling Mizovo, a 2-day has to count 7, just like a 3. Fred the Gemara, why Mizovo? One place are we including it in sphere accounting, and why in the other place are we excluding it from a Korban? You're using it; it's the same word contextually, and you're using them in 2 different contexts, 2 different limudim completely. One is a miyut, an exclusion, and one's a riboy, is an inclusion. As I read the Gemara. Amalera Papa Labaya. Maishna Haimi Zovo Leinian Sphira, that you say it includes it. The Marbi Bay, you're including Zov Bal Shtei Riyos. Umaishna Haimi Zovo, the Mimayet Bay Zov Bal Shtei Riyos. And we exclude it from a Korban. Amalei, Isak Adaita Chai Lemutehu. If you want to tell me that it comes to exclude from the 7, Lishta Kromine, don't say anything. The Chitemi, you'll say, if you don't say anything, don't say Mizovo. Asya Medina, you learn the Kavachaimer. If you tell me Mishka V'Moshev, ain't then you count 7 days. Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom Tochiach. The Nida, the Zava will go ahead and disprove you. The Chitema Haimi Boyle Mizovo, V'Leminego, you need it Mizovo, I can use it twice. You need to teach me that if he has double, he's a Zav and he's a Mitzayra, that he counts after it stops the flow. So how can I use it to teach me that you count 7 days, right? And Kain Lichter Kravik Yitter Hazav, the Lishtek Mizovo, Lamali. Why do you have to say Mizovo? Yitter Hazav, the Lishtek, stop. Mizovo, Lamali. So Limit Hazav, Balshterio, Shetoyin Svira Shiva. So let's go weiter. Now, says the Gemara, next, guys, it doesn't get easier. A Mitzayra, outside. Mitzayra. We know that the only way a person becomes a Mitzayra if he has a simanim of tzaras. He has a certain thing that's called a nega tzaras, and it usually has a white hair in it, and usually it's deeper than the skin around it. And in order to be a mitzayra, you need the kohen to pronounce it. If you go to a dermatologist, he says you look like a mitzayra, it doesn't make a difference. You need the kohen to pronounce that as a mitzayra. Good. Now sometimes he doesn't have the simanim; he has only part of the simanim. The kohen will go ahead and put him away. That doesn't mean he's off the hook. That means in both cases you're a mitzayra. When you're put away for sure, you're considered a mitzayra muchlit. You're a mitzayra that is muchlit. That is what you are muchlit. You're decisive mitzayra. Every halacha mitzayra applies to you. Mitzayra muskar is when you put away because the kohen doesn't know yet. He's going to come back 7 days later. If nothing changes, he's going to come back another 7 days. And if nothing changes, then you're free. Good. But now, we know the mitzayra fellas has to have his hair undone and he has to rip his clothing. So mitzayra muskar would not. A mitzayra muchlet, yes. Right. And the only difference between someone, the mitzayra who becomes cleansed is el tiglachas siparim. is what is the taking a haircut, a body shave. A vaday mitzvah, guys. Once the kohen pronounces him tahar, takes a total body shave. He's outside the machna. You take two birds with a high sap, and you shech one of the birds, live birds, and you do this ritual actually right in, and you sprinkle it on the person. That would only be by a mitzvah. That is what that is muchlit, not a mitzvah muska. Mitzvah muska, once he's put away, kohen shows up. It hasn't expanded. He's free. He's tahar. That's it. Okay, so two dinim. The din of prio prima regarding the din of the kohen that's muchlit has to go ahead and have his hair undone, unshorn, and clothing ripped, as opposed to the musker not. Holding shiluach regarding the halacha of being chutz lamachne. Mitzvah, guys, there's three machnes. It's machne shchina, machne levia, machne Yisrael. So he sent out of three machnes. Okay, holding shiluach, they're both equal. Whether it's a mitzvah musker or mitzvah muchlit, you're sent out of three machnes, because our Mishnah does not make that distinction. Betuma, guys, another severity of mitzvah. If they walk into the house, the mitama, the adam, and the kalim in the house, the mitama tumas oil, similar to a mace. If you have a tuma that's in a compartment or with roof overhead, it's mitama. So both will be mitama. Now, minani immediately that there's no din of prio prima, guys, by mitzvah musker. How do you know there's no din of hair undone and ripped clothing by the mitzvah? That is what musker that is put away to ascertain whether he's a mitzvah or not. The Tanur of Shmuel Yitzchak Kamed Rav Huna, it says v'tiharu akoyim, the kohen will find him tahar misapachasi. It's not. It's misapachas is a tahar to nega misapachasi. The kibes begodov v'toher. He washes his clothing v'toher. Now, guys, if it meant that he becomes tahar, it should say v'yi toher. V'toher is mashma that he's tahar from something previously. What's that? The tahar, the prio prima. He's tahar meikara. That he was tahar all along from prio prima. In other words, when they put away the musker, he didn't have to do prio prima, because it's not speaking futuristic, it's speaking in the past. Amay Rav Elamiyata. If you're going to tell me anytime it says v'toher, it means the past. What about by zav? By zav bal shtei riyos, it says the following: by a zav we see three times. He goes there, he washes his clothing with tier. There's no halacha that he was tar from before. The Baal Shtei Riyos, he threw the whole gamut of things at him. Right? Ella, it must be Ella Tor Hashlam Milatamic. Outside. Let me give it to you outside. One of the severities of his zav is that if he goes ahead and he kicks a kli, let's say this is even a kli cheres, he clicks this kli, it becomes tamei. So let's say that he's a zav. On the seventh day, he doesn't wait till evening to go to the mikvah. He goes to the mikvah in the morning. Good? That's okay. He now kicks this. So now he's tahar. He kicks this. Later on in the day, he sees he's counting 7 days. Now he sees a flow, which for all intents and purposes eradicates what? He has to count 7 days again. This thing's going to be tahar. So tahar means tar meikara. That retroactively we don't say this. He was tamei when he touched it, but when he was tahar, he's tahar. So too by the mitzvah, the same thing. If mitzvah goes to the mikvah and goes and walks into the house, and we're going to say, and then later on, all of a sudden it flourishes his tzaras. We don't say whatever he was in the house is tamei, it's tahar. But not that you can teach me halacha prio prima. That's what the Gemara is going to state right now. So what do you say? So I'm going to Elamiyata. What do you have to say? Tahar hashta milatame kli cheres beheset. He's tahar now that if he goes ahead and kicks a kli, it's not dafka kli cheres beheset, any type of tuma. Afagav the hoder chazi, even though he sees later on in the day and now he becomes tamei, loy mitamel mafreya, it will not be mitamel retroactively. Achnami by mitzayra tahar hashta milatame bebil mafreya. That if he walked into a house, we don't say, and he was tahar, we don't say retroactively everything in the house is tamei. So therefore, guys, we don't have a source for a tsoira musker being pata from prio prima. Ella, here's your source. Elama Rava mehacha. The pasuk says, guys, but sarua asher boy nega, sarua that has the nega, and that pasuk is speaking about what? But sarua asher boy nega bigodov yeh perumim uvroisha yeh perua. That's in Vayikru Yud Gimel Pasuk Mem Hey, and it's Sarua. Now, guys, listen to the words. Vahat Sarua, the Mitzaira, Asher Boy Hanega. Asher Boy Hanega is totally extraneous. Once you said that Sarua is a Mitzaira, of course he has a nega. So what does it mean Asher Boy Hanega? Oh, Vatsur Asher Boy Hanega, Misha Tzarasa Tluya Begufoi. This would be a Mitzaira who the Tzaras is totally in his body. Yotzah, this would exclude a Mitzaira Muskar, Shein Tzaras Tluya Begufoi, Ela B'yamim, only in days. Guys, outside. Look at me, guys, outside. The person who's Vadai a Mitzaira, he's Vadai, he is a Mitzaira. He's what we call Mitzaira Mukhlat. You put him away. What's the only way for him to get clean? Is for that Tzaras to disappear. It's totally in his body. That Sarua Shaboya Nega, that is Priyo Prima. The Sarua that Ashaboya Nega, that the only way for him to get cleansed is to get rid of the Nega. That, it says in the Pasuk, that Roisha Yeprua, the Lashon of Priyo Prima is stated by that particular Mitzaira. What about a Mitzaira that's Muskar, that's put away? What's the cleanliness over there? Not that it gets better, it just doesn't get worse. In other words, it could stay exactly the same. But the Kohen comes back 7 days, and 7 days later, and it hasn't changed, he's tahar. So what made him tahar? It's the exact same, nothing. The nega has not changed, ki huzeh. It just didn't get bigger, it just didn't grow a white hair. It didn't establish any of the simonim of B'tzaira. So what cleansed him? Days cleansed him, right? So very geschmack. Says Rava, the pasuk itself states which type of Mitzaira is Priyo Prima. Let's read it. That Sarua Asher Boy Hanega, which the god of Yiyeh Perumim, his clothing should be ripped. For Roisha Perua, which Mitzaira does it state the din of ripped clothing and unshorn hair? That's the Mitzaira Sarua Asher Boy Hanega. But the Mitzaira that Asher Ein Boy Nega, the one that has to be cleansed because the days passed, it doesn't say Priyo Prima there at all. So therefore, you learn directly. It's a very nice, beautiful Torah Shabbat Ped B'Shat. Eloma Rava Mehacha Batsura Shaboy Nega Misha Tzaratet Tlui Begufo Yatzazeh Shein Tzaratet Tlui Begufo Ela B'Yamim. Amalei Abai El Miata. Okay, you got a nice limit, Rava. I like your limit, but of course, as I like it, but there's always a but. Right, El Miata. Kol Yamai Kol Yamei Asher Nega Boy Yitma. All the days that are nega in it Yitma. Right, the Tamei who bod Tamei who bod that Yeshiv b'chutz lamachne. He calls out his Tamei, sits outside the machne. Tamei Yikra, he sits outside the machne. Kol Yimei Asher Nega Boy, guys. So guys, this is the pasuk. Guys, look at me, guys. This is the pasuk that states what? That the Mitzaira has to be chutz lamachne, correct? Which type of Mitzaira? Kol Yimei Asher Hanega Boy. You'd say only the Mitzaira that depends upon what? The nega. What about the Mitzaira that's not depending upon the nega? The Mitzaira that is muskar. I'd say what? He's not sent out of 3 machnas. But why do we finish? We said le'inyan being sent out of the machnas, they're all equal. In other words, Rava, if you're going to use the limud of Atsua Shabaya Nega to limit Priyo Prima to the Vadai Mitzaira, then you'd have to do the same regarding Shaluach, but sending outside the Machna, and say it's only by the one that has the Nega, not the one that has days. I said that. Gvalda Kasha. Amalei Abai says, Abai, great question. Elamiata, if you're going to have this limit about Sarua, then call him Yimei Asher Nega Boy Yitma. Mishet Tzarasat Pli Begufa, who defined Shiluach? Only the one that has the Nega in his body would require Shiluach. Ushein Tzarate Tlu Begufoi, but the one that what is the Mitzayra Muskar, that you're waiting for the days to pass? Ain't toin shiluach. V'chitem, you're going to say, Hachanami, you're right. 1 second. But Katani, we said, Ein bein mitzura muslim mitzayra muchlat ela priyo prima. The only chilik was the hair and the clothing ripped. Halenya shiluach regarding being sent out of 3 machmas. Ulatami b'biyah and coming into a house. Zev is a shavin. So Abaya's got a great question on Rava. How can you use that limit of kol shetzua by lenya priyo prima? Then you'd have to use it regarding shliuch also, and say that a muskar does not have to be sent out of 3 machmas, and he does. Amalei answered Rava. You may, when it says, you could have said you may, but it says kol you may. You know what kol does? The rabbis mitzayra muskal shiluach. You're right. In other words, my limit is squeaky clean. Through is gavaldik. But there's a word that it says by the budget. It says kol, anyone, meaning any mitzvah, even a mitzvah, a musker has to be sent out. Right? It's part of my time aloi. If that's the case, if you're saying kol, so then the mitzvah musker should require on the seventh day when he's tahar, should require the ritual with the birds and the body shave, and he doesn't. If you're saying kol, included that as well. Says right. The Tani ain't being Torah says Ella Ihachi Teglachas my time aloi. The Tani ain't being a Torah mitach heskel Torah mitach heglet El Teglachas siparim the birds. Rabbi Amakra the pasuk says the Yotza Kohen al michutz lamachne. The Kohen goes outside the machne. V'hine nirpa nega hatzayras, and behold, it's gotten better. Misha tzarate tluy berufua, who comes outside the machne. Someone who's is the end of his tzaras depends upon him being going away. Yatzazed, this would exclude a mitzvah muskar shein tzaras tluy berufusay ela biyadim. Okay, let's just reiterate the last two. Ein zav ein bein zav mitzvah shtei rios ruach and carbon. We said the only chilik is that is tackling in carbon. But regarding Mishka and Moshe, they would be equal. This thing of Mitzvah, Muska, again, just the concept, there's two types. This guy's a Mitzvah pending. He's not a suffing Mitzvah, he's a pending Mitzvah. Because if he's a suffing Mitzvah, you wouldn't have a halacha of being Tameh at all. We know this pending Mitzvah is Mitama. This pending Mitzvah does go outside 3 machnos. The only thing he doesn't do is Priyo Prima. For that, we have a pasuk called Tzua Shenega Boy, Dafka, that Priyo Prima. That requires that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.